All right, Zig on the top. Today we are joined by Evan Friedell and Packy Lunn of Jimkata. Jimkata is a power trio based out of New York. They take organic rock and songwriting that is pure to the heart and blend it with electronic instruments and blend it together to make music that is danceable yet thought-provoking. Jimkata is playing May 4th, Thursday, in Lakewood, Ohio at the Winchester with my band Sea Level, letter C dash. If you're new to this podcast, I play in a band called Sea Level, letter C dash level. We are a funk punk reggae rock group based out of Cleveland. We take 12 string guitars and run them through Marshall amps to make a high energetic set. And we'll be performing at the Winchester with Jimkata. Jimkata also has a new record out. It's called Bonfires. We're going to listen to a track off Bonfires. This is Skinny Dipping off the album Bonfire. Skinny Dippin', the tune. Bonfire's the record, Jimkata. It's available now on all streaming platforms. I recommend you guys check out the album. It is a banger. So, before we get to this, one more reminder. May 4th at the Winchester. It's a Thursday. Jimkata's playing with local support from Sea Level, letter C dash, and Abstract Sounds. It's going to be a good one. Tickets are linked below. And if you guys can like, rate, review, subscribe to the podcast on one of the podcast platforms, it helps me keep talking to cool guests like our friends from Jimkata and sharing their insight with you. Final note before this interview, this was done over the phone during a thunderstorm, so there's certain points where it gets to be a little choppy. I did my best to edit it, and you can hear everything that's being said. So if it gets a little choppy, just hang through. And here we go. So my first question to kind of get into it, you guys have been to Ohio a few times. Have you been to Parma?
Parma?
Yeah, the city of Parma.
I don't believe so. Is that, I think we've played Columbus, Cleveland, Cincinnati.
Okay, because Parma's, like, it's around Cleveland, but it's not too far from the name Parmistan, where the game is held.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I was gonna make
see where you're going.
Drew Carey show reference. I remember that. Wasn't that? Yeah.
Yeah. Or the Goulardi.
But yeah, Parmesan.
So, first of all, Jimkata, the film, is fucking fantastic. Based off your guys' name, I dove into that, and, it's ridiculous. But my question is, if Parmistan was in Parma, do you guys think you would find your way through the game? Or where would you get held up?
As long as there's a horse to pole vault over and so some windows with mats to fall into on the outside, I think we'll be okay.
Yeah, I think those ropes, the fire rope, would have done me in. I would have fallen off that and got arrowed in the back. Arrowed!
Yeah. Yeah, I haven't seen the movie in years, but what always stood out to me was how conveniently there was a pommel horse just there with handles.
Yeah.
There's that scene where it's like there might be a little bit of anti-American sentiment, but
oh, it's right. Somebody right off camera just jabs him with the arrow like it came from somewhere else.
Yeah, that's the highlight.
Yeah, the timing is great.
So you guys did you guys start playing together in middle school? Did I read that right?
Yeah, a long time ago.
Okay. Now, was it always Jimkata, or was there some other earlier adaptations?
There were earlier ones. We started off as I guess Livewire.
Okay.
And then we transitioned after high school, I guess, into the original Jimkata spelling. And then once we started getting people to come to the shows, we started we changed the spelling to avoid any potential copyright. We didn't know what we were getting into. So
yeah,
the name just stuck. I think with all names, it's temporary until you're just living with it. And yeah, it's kind of what happened.
So was the lineup always the kind of same between you two? Were you always on guitar and vocals, Evan, and Packy, you on drums? Or did that happen once the Jimkata band started taking off?
Yep, there's always been core 3 members that are still in the band. In fact, the only 3 members that are currently in the band. We've always played together. We've had a kind of a lineup of bass players over the years, and then started doing it basically the way we're currently doing it, just because it seemed easier and a little more streamlined into, you know, the message that we were trying to get out and have people receive.
Okay, so like developing that, because me and my bass player, we've been playing since he was in middle school. I was freshman year in high school, and it's like it's an interesting dynamic when you have like a musical relationship and or any relationship that withstands longer than like 3 years. You know what I mean? Like when you really start to go from kind of naive into this like world of music or this world of whatever your creative outlet is, to maintain through that from the kind of naivete to like the seriousness. So like as you guys were like growing into that, did the roles kind of already seem like they were in place? Or did you guys find yourself like switching, like someone taking on a way different like aspect of the music industry, I want to say, or music like full-time approach than you ever thought you would?
I think to get back to your other question, I mean, yeah, we always played, like I played guitar, Packy played drums, and then Aaron played guitar as well. And we'd been playing together, you know, since jamming in like Packy's basement in middle school. But Aaron, you know, over time took on playing synths as well. It became sort of just like a natural fascination of ours from like the first time we entered an actual music studio. I think in also with that was our first sort of realization and fascination with song structure and just like creating textures, creating sound palettes in the studio that you might not get just jamming together, you know, in a room, is a way to like sort of have multiple extensions of yourself, you know, like you can only play, if I'm just in a room, I can kind of just play my guitar pretty much and sing or whatever. And Aaron can play the synth and the guitar, but not everything all at once. And so I think that just having that sort of a simple realization at first, sort of led to, I think we've grown a little more interested and capable with like the production side of music.
For sure, and how to replicate that and bring it to the stage. And that's what I was getting at by message. It's like we just slowly, the kind of music we make, we just required to like more layers than we had players to play them. So like we kind of had to adapt to a new system in order to do it all live on stage. I remember one sound guy like once said like, "Wow, 3 guys, a lot of sound." That's how he summed us up.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
that's definitely like the power trio like effect. Even if you know what I mean, like, oh, I can see how many people are doing it, and there's more than that than I hear. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like the in a way like that cool goal that maybe is not pronounced at first, but just kind of happens. Because like when I went through the discography, and from the first like kind of a shorter record, the self-titled, to Burn My Money, there is a complete like shift in like band kind of song structure and tonality and just like that process. It sounds like that time period between those first 3 albums, you guys are really honing in where you wanted to go. Because like when I listened to that first EP, it sounded like a lot of 311 and kind of Dispatch influence.
I think that's kind of to the point I was saying earlier. I think that very first one was a beginning of like a self-awareness, whereas before we were just sort of playing together as a room. Started out, you know, back even before that, like when we were kids, listening to, you know, punk and grunge and stuff like that, and then like sort of started jamming a little more as we got older. And but anyways, that first recording experience was one of like self-awareness of like, do we really want it to sound like that? Or do we really want this to go? This chorus is too long on the first thing. You know, simple sort of realizations that different experience when you're just having fun with your buddies in a room. You could play that same riff like 20 million times and it's fun every time.
Yeah.
But if you're listening to it, you know, you listen to it back, you're like, oh, actually, I'm bored of this after, after the first two times. Let's move to the next section. So it's just like that simple awareness, I think, transitioned into Burn My Money. And we went to the same studio for that one, and with just a new set of, awareness and goals and big leaps in our personal being aware of what our tones sounded like, our amps, our, drum tones, and beginning of experimenting with electronic stuff too. So like there's some pretty raw, experimental beginnings. And this is for us at least, we didn't have access, I guess, to these things, but we weren't using Ableton yet. We weren't like fully keen or didn't fully understand how like the electronic artists and hip hop artists we like got the sounds they liked. So we were just sort of like mimicking those the best we could.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then like the older you get, you start to understand how those influences actually get their sounds. And that's kind of, leads to more where we are today. But I think that was part of it, was trying to like mimic some of our favorite, electronic and hip hop artists as well at the time. So yeah.
How were you guys what did that kind of process look like? Was it just like using the sampler, like just the preset sound, and then eventually learning how to program it yourself? Or what would that or was it just making the sound somehow and then like putting, like, what did that kind of process look like? Because I don't dabble too much with electronic instruments myself, but I do find them fascinating.
Sure. To me, I remember it was a matter of gear that we were using because, we started off, it was bass, drums, guitars. And then we slowly added samplers and synthesizers into the mix. And I distinctly remember having the talk in the studio about like the bell curve effect, meaning like kind of the principle of like, if you're going to say it, shout it. You can't really often you can't really dip your toes into it unless you're really going to go for like the authentic like version of that. Otherwise it just comes off as either a joke or just like underproduced.
Right.
So if you're going to commit to something like that, you really, like, for me at least, it was about like doing my homework and making sure that there's like A, space in the mix for these kind of sounds, and B, like, is this the direction that it's going in? And then you can base other choices off of that.
Okay. So, because I'm familiar with the bell curve, like, through stats, right? So, like, now when you say the bell curve effect, that's just, like, it's going all in to that point of the, like, or can you elaborate on that a little bit?
It's kind of like, what's the principle? You either got to whisper it or shout it. Nobody cares if you say it. So it's like right in that middle. Yeah, it's right in that middle where, like, you won't necessarily, like, it won't come across unless, like, you're on either end of that bell curve.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah, okay. Well, okay, so during that second record, that was committing to that whole electronic approach within your guys' sound then?
I would say so, yeah. Okay. What do you think, Evan?
It's both. I think we were still finding it. I think that was like, I think by Die Digital, that's when we were more like, committing a little more to that stuff and just,
definitely.
I would definitely agree going through the discography. It's like, from the first record, there's a huge step up in production, and then from the second to third, it's like from that third record on, it seems like you guys found that tone, that sound, that like balance of, I guess, electronic instruments and how to utilize them. Because it's like when that come out, 2012 for that third record. So like before that, it was kind of like, I remember stuff wasn't easy, like growing up like through the 90s. Like I'm not used to just being like, hey, internet, how do I do a thing? You know what I mean?
Sure.
Which is like the process now, which is amazing. But like, so there was such an upheaval of trying to make things work. Like even just recording all I started tracking our early stuff on a cassette 8-track, like 4-track.
Wow, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and then the next year, like I got one for Christmas when I was like in middle school. The next year, like I couldn't get cassettes for them anymore. So I was like, now what do I do? But
yeah.
So like
I do like parallel our process with the change in technology for sure, because like even like having access to a DAW, like a digital audio workstation, at first they were around in like the early 2000s, but it only got cheaper and easier to have one over time.
Yeah.
And and sort of more like just prevalent. And I think that also has from, I think, yeah, Packy tapped into Ableton, which we use live. And then like from Die Digital on, I think we all started to just get a little more interested in, messing around with that stuff at home and like, yeah, creating the sounds we wanted before we went to a studio. Like,
I think we realized that it was harder to describe what we wanted to happen to like an engineer or producer, and it was easier just to create it ourselves and then just dump it in and be like, here's the sound.
Yeah.
Because I remember, yeah, like as Evan said, to kind of piggyback on that, like I remember sampling into the SBS with a microphone, and like that was the earliest like form of sampling I would do, and throw it into the music and like edit it on the little digital screen on the thing.
Yeah.
And I kind of realized quickly like this is not going to be time effective at all, so I got to figure out a new way. So I started making samples in Ableton and then importing them into that and then dropping them live.
Right. So, and it's interesting, it's all this kind of like analog process to this digital process, which works quicker and more efficiently. But it's only like after you've had your hands in the mud, so to say, that you know how to utilize and alter the sound that you're working with.
Yeah. And, no, sorry. Like I remember like Matt, who like produced those first 3 records, like we'd be like, oh, it'd be great to have like, something like a telephone ringing here. And he would just, I remember like turned around, just looked coldly at me and was just like, all right, where's the telephone? And I was just kind of like, ouch. All right. So I guess I gotta, yeah, I guess this is the kick I need to kind of just like get the sounds, and it's easier to show than tell in that regard.
Definitely. And it's like when you're not kind of wasting studio time, so you're not paying for you to invent the sound, or to create the space. You come in with that, and like that's only stuff you learn after doing it for sure.
Right, and I realized that like you might hear like a specific layer or like a sound in your head, but it's easy to sound like an idiot when you're just like, what if there was like a jet engine, but it was like in reverse. And like there was also all this other stuff. Like it's a lot easier to get the vision that you have across if you just produce the sound, if you just have it with you, and you're like, what about this? And like as Evan said, we've gotten a lot better at just doing that, like and then bringing it to the table rather than relying on anybody else to be like, oh, I know what this song needs.
Right. Well, in that makes a really interesting like band dynamic, like as far as like songwriting goes, with all these like for everyone to can kind of contribute in different layers to bring out certain tones and certain sounds that tell the story of the song. So like
totally,
when you guys like go in for writing a song, is it kind of like one person brings like kind of a verse chorus to the band and then everyone kind of piles on, or does it start as the band then branch off?
Generally Evan will bring something up, like a pretty, and he's gotten a lot better obviously at having like a start to finish like formed idea, and like that's great when it's like that, because like for Aaron, he can just record synthesizer layers at home and punch it up with whatever, and then I'll kind of insert any layers that I see going. But yeah, lately Evan's got like he's just been cranking out a lot of songs that we can't even keep up with, which we want to like take to over the finish line and release. So it's an interesting system in the way it's like developed over the years.
And is that what contributed to Bonfires? Like that type of process?
Absolutely. And Bonfires was kind of a cross country effort on recording it, because like some of the songs that started before we even went to California, a lot of them we finished while we were there and then brought to the studio. And some of them we like started in the studio and then finished out there. So it was like, because Aaron was out here the whole time, so we were just like, we kept like punching him in like wherever he had like synthesizer layers. So to me, like that was a big confidence boost in like us being able to handle a lot more in house.
It sort of changed over time to suit like the needs of where we were at in life as well. Like when you first start and you're just playing together in a room, you kind of like hash things out over time, but you're also practicing like 4 nights a week, 5, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas over time, it's like, and also in the process of in hearing back studio recordings and sort of having a critique of it, being like, oh, it doesn't sound like the way I want it to sound. That kind of that forces you to explore, doing more of that homework before you go record, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah. And then like, you know, the more that, yeah, from Bonfires and kind of where we're at now is just, working, sort of remotely with each other. And, you know, just, it sort of suits the way how we're living, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that makes sense. Like, because like at least with Sea Level, I'll write a lot of the main tune and bring it to the band, and then we expand upon it like that. So it's like there's a form, there's a structure. How do we best kind of deliver the momentum message of the song, or how are we going to track it like this? And like, you know what I mean? Like you start to think in those different layers, and it's interesting as kind of like someone who writes songs kind of having that foresight of like, I want to hear this type of harmony on top of it, or you know what I mean, or kind of writing around that space. So I've never written with like a synth in mind, but I imagine it's kind of like writing like a chord progression with a riff. Like this thing's going over E minor, whatever it is. Is that kind of how you guys utilize that in the initial writing stage before bringing it to the group? I guess.
I would say generally it doesn't. Like
Okay.
it's I feel like synths always come in, I don't even want to say like supplemental, but like the role they play in the music changes because, like, you know, Evan owns a few synths that he always records with, and we all do. So I feel like the influence of synthesizers, I feel like, have definitely like gone up and up with each record we've done. But you know, I guess at the end of the day, we are still rooted as like guitar based rock. I mean, what would you say, Evan?
I mean, I was going to say it depends. There's certain songs where it definitely started with like a riff from a synth, you know, like Bonfires itself.
Right.
You know, when we first started working on that like that was there. Or sometimes like Aaron, for example, like won't let you down off In Motion. That was like
Right.
Aaron's demo. It's just like that synth, you know, right away. But other times they come in where, you know, it's interesting. You know, a song, I think we take the approach in general. I think we do take the approach of just like whatever a song needs.
Yeah.
So, and we've gotten better at maybe stripping a song back to its basic elements first, in a way of like, okay, what is going on here? What is the beat? What is the chorus? What is, you know, sort of deconstructing and then building it up, you know, or at least that's sort of the process I tend to go through in my head.
That's true.
Yeah. And then we add in little like synth layers if it calls for it, or
I think you're right, because I feel like we're at risk of like kind of going too far in the weeds right off the bat with certain tracks. But then like you said, like I think we were encouraged like to kind of take a step back and just decide like what's absolutely like the essence of this, what's necessary, and like build it back up from there. Because it is still about the song. It's like, that's, as Evan said, like it's whatever best serves the song is what's going to happen at the end of the day. Like nobody's trying to wedge in like a piano part just because we have a piano.
Right.
Certain songs are just start off like they're like, we know this is beat driven, this instrumental is hot, and that's what's leading it, you know. And then like we build vocals around that or something. Whereas other ones, it just seems like maybe it's more like, you could play this song on an acoustic guitar and it would probably work. So then what do you need arrangement wise? You know, that whole kind of thing. I think that's something we got into over the years. At least I did, as I started to think about our own recordings and our songs and sort of like get more perspective. Because one of the things, like when we started playing, we were pretty much only playing our songs. At least I can speak for myself as a musician. I'm not like a trained musician, and neither are any of us really. So when we were playing, we would play 100 shows a year plus whatever. I feel like I was just kind of playing the songs from memory and not fully aware of like what key this is in, what scale works over this, what, you know. And then over time started to like learn a little bit more of that and get some more context for our own music. And then I was able to, as I start to get song ideas, now I have like a little more context to work with. I think we all do to that degree, where it's not just like, here's this riff, and then we just like hammer that riff.
Yeah, right. There's more distinct paths now carved out, where it's like, okay, option, we can go down this way, we can go down this way, or we can go down that way.
That's like, I think, kind of coming from the like magic ethos of like, I played something and it worked. I can relate to that as a guitar player, like starting and being influenced like by people like Hendrix, and you're like, oh, he never read music. Or, you know what I mean? You like learn all these like kind of epic mythos things about these musicians, but he still knew what the key of G was. You know what I mean? Like, and like
Sure.
you kind of like learn that there's like this kind of magic to not knowing, but then it kind of limits, right? But also I think that's super important, because if you go in too thought out, that the whole thing we're supposed to do is express emotion, share emotion. And like if you sometimes you think too much within that and you don't actually get that. So it's a key balance of like just feeling it and then kind of like learning those tools of how to further express that. Because like
Definitely.
that was my kind of like journey with like theory. Like I started studying in high school on my own because I was seeing like, oh well, if I know what I can do with this, I can add certain elements to the
Definitely.
And like so that's crazy that like you guys start jamming and then you're playing over 100 shows a year. Like could backtrack for a moment from the process, and like how did like it go from just like jamming in Packy's basement to like booking yourself out that like far out? Like that's an intense jump.
Well, it slowly ramped up,
Yeah.
because we ended up in Ithaca because we were going to college here. So when you're a
What
college
for?
band,
Was it for music or?
I was going for communications. And where were you, Evan? Anthropology of some sort?
Transferred in from Plattsburgh. I majored in anthropology.
That's cool.
And Aaron moved from Buffalo and went to TC3.
Right.
The whole purpose was sort of just like I was bored where I was. Aaron was kind of bored where he was, and at least worth convincing that sort of what we had started doing at the end of high school, we had just started sort of making up our own little tunes and having fun with it. And I think we all were like, I think Packy was kind of the one that was like, hey, you should come to Ithaca because there's a little music here. Yeah. I mean, it did seem that way, and like we moved here, musically for music and art and all that, it was a good little town. I mean, we're from Oneonta, New York. I mean, Ithaca was a step up for sure.
Yeah.
And no hate. We love Oneonta, but
well, I think what we realized quickly is that like any bar is stoked if you bring 100 to 200 of your friends in there for the night.
Yeah.
So like we found that there was some we were like, oh, we actually have a little power here in like the way we get booked, because like we realized like this is like this is a nice golden ticket to have, is that like we actually have fans like right off the get go. And then slowly like people started following us to like other cities that we would play in. So that that's ultimately like how you just create the buzz, is like by already having like a fan base that shows up. And the bar might be like, who are all these kids and like where are they coming from? But like who cares, because we're selling drinks and tickets.
Yeah, which is, man, the out-of-town booking is the hardest bit. You know what I mean? So like I feel like I spend so much, especially now post-pandemic, screaming into the void, like but that totally okay, so stuff starts to escalate there. And then you guys just, do you hit like these festival circuits or like?
Yep.
Yeah.
There'd be like a few local festivals that we do. There were a few other like college towns, or like down even in Pennsylvania, that like Williamsport, like little places that started to go well for us. And my brother came on and helped with the management, just sending emails and doing that stuff. And we eventually we got a couple more high profile gigs in like festivals in like 2008, somewhere in there. And then at some point we got an agent, and it just sort of
that's awesome.
And that was it.
Yeah.
Well, other bands too from like surrounding regions, they hear of you because it's like, oh, I heard that these guys do well in, these 4 cities like around here. We're
Yeah.
coming to town, and then like we kind of cut our teeth on doing show trades. So
Nice.
somebody
Okay.
from
Yeah,
say
yeah.
Ohio, like a band like Sea Level would be like, hey, why don't we open for you guys out like in New York where you're from in the New England, and then like in turn like you can open for us here and get you in front of a bunch of people.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And it
That's
was really like word of mouth. Like Facebook had just kind of started, and it was like only students. So like early on, like it was easy to like actually make a post that only your demographic is seeing.
yeah, yeah, which okay, that's the whole other like the Facebook marketing end of it is definitely changed and I think became a little more challenging. But like so that's like the show trade thing such a powerful thing cuz that takes it back to the DIY, like the basement madness, you know what I mean? Like and like in the best way. It keeps it pure, it keeps it like actually making connections and sharing people you are also moved by or you know what I mean feel like gels well with the people you're bringing on to put them in front of, and like that's cool. That's cool. I'd like because I with the guys we talk around here, show trades were a hot topic word that we started dabbling and started to do and actually have success with, but like it's interesting. It was I don't know. Pandemic made it a different go for us for a while.
Yeah. Well, that was also just, to back up, like that was the only option back then
Yeah.
because there wasn't Spotify. There wasn't an easy way to hear about other bands outside your market other than word of mouth. And like a lot of people that we'd see would be like, have you heard of so and so? Oh, you got to play with so and so.
What it kind of more challenging, but like I nostalgic pure time. You know what I mean?
More challenging, but in a
Yeah.
weird way, the scene seemed smaller, so it was almost easier for all of us to become aware of each other like a lot earlier. Like I don't know if you know the guys in Papadozio, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
became fast buddies because we got put on the same bill in Baltimore one night, and it was just like, oh, we're friends now, aren't we? Okay, yeah, and then all of a sudden, like we just started playing shows with them, and then that led to other stuff, and then that we just kept growing and like making new connections from there. And like pretty much every city that we would hit, it was because we paired up with a band that was also doing well in that city.
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome because it's like I when you do have that buddy thing, it's almost like a or the kind of bill that's put together and you don't know who you're playing with. You know what I mean? Like sometimes
Mm-hmm.
if it's out of your hands, like oh you guys are playing with these guys, and you get in the green room and it's kind of like they're over there, we're over here type deal. You know what I mean? You don't really buddy up, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah, it is a
Um,
bummer. Like we always prefer when it is much more of a hang and like people are, you know,
yeah, well,
it's different. Yeah. Now, like it's different coming back because like we're just we went on hiatus for a good part of 4 years, and in that time, I feel like a lot changed landscape wise,
yeah,
and so we're still like we're still kind of like reintroducing ourselves in a way to like the scene.
Shift in the last like however many years in general
yeah,
has been that like back I think when we started even like let's say 2010 2011 even like the early days of like you said social media stuff like that like it's like things started in person at the show and then spread on the internet, and now I think things it's the opposite. They spread on the internet and then go to the show.
Yeah,
It's
good
like
yeah,
call.
it
yeah,
completely flipped.
It did, yes.
Yeah, and in the same time, at the same time, it's gotten harder to get your word out on the internet.
yeah,
And so it's a strange conundrum to
Well,
be in.
before there wasn't paid ads, and like literally, like if 15,000 people like followed you on Facebook or Instagram, that's how many people would see your posts. Like it would be
right.
the people that already subscribed to you. But now, like you have to pay to even reach the people that are choosing to follow you in the first place.
Yeah, that is a strange phenomena. Like, I sat in a music tech conference. My buddy from his name's Brandon Hawkins. He puts on or Brandon Davis. That's what he's going as. Puts on and like they had a Royal Wooten, one of the Wooten brothers, on there, and he was just going
Cool.
on. Yeah, it was wicked. He was going on this spiel about just that because like if you put something out, you have 1,500 followers, you put out a post and you get 20 likes, the math kind of is wild on that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
S-
disheartening.
yeah, it is. It is. So like now there's this whole like post backstage web game on how to like reach the people that already reached you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's interesting, even though like online, it's like I've always like kind of believed that there's a balance between digital reality and reality in a way. Like it says 25 people are going to be at the show, and at the show you can probably count on 5 people. You know what I mean? Like it's an interesting like dynamic between like numbers and the digital platforms compared to reality, because the reality ones are the ones that kind of really matter in a way. You know, those are the people that actually are moved to do something, as opposed to just kind of like support via likes or pretend attendees. I don't know. But it's interesting that it's kind of flipped like that.
Yeah, and you can't hate it. It's just
No,
different.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
like by the time we started playing, it was already different, because like I remember when we were in middle school, like college bands would come through Oneonta, and like the only way you would ever know if they're playing is because there's a flyer on a telephone pole in the neighborhood that you live in.
Yeah, yeah. And I
And
think
like you literally had to walk by it and see that to even know that there's a show happening. And then like if anything, maybe they'll get on the college radio station and be able to run an ad, but that's it. Other than that, it's word of mouth.
and I think what you said is key. It's not to hate this like change. It's to embrace it and find your place and how you can navigate through it. Because
Yeah,
that's such an important thing, because everything is going to alter. As soon as you think you have one thing down or understand a thing, it flips. And
definitely.
like,
And like the people that are doing the best, I feel like are always the first people to utilize a certain like method of doing things.
yeah,
Like we were talking how like it seemed like a lot of bands recently started doing live streams, and how that really started boosting people's career, because people from home could just be as lazy as they wanted to and be like, well, I'm going to check this out. I'm going to check this out 3 times before I actually go to a show, rather
yeah,
than if before you wouldn't even be able to research a band until you had to go and see them, and at least like you get one ticket out of them.
yeah, yeah. Did you guys find yourself during the so wait before the 4 year hiatus, was that right at the like, was that 2019, or were you guys taking a hiatus previous?
It started in 2017 and ran
2017.
until 2021.
Okay. And was that just kind of burn from hustling, doing hundreds of shows a year? Like, was it just a kind of like a reset?
Yeah, I mean, it was exhausting and like kind of maddening to do like the kind of touring that we were doing. And I think that we just realized that it wasn't going to be like mentally healthy or sustainable for us to keep doing this cycle of you tour, you record, you tour, you record, you record, you tour, then you tour,
Yeah.
and then you have more tour. So like we were all just kind of like at an impasse of like what to do next strategy wise. So it was good to kind of take a breather like that, because I feel like at a certain time you start to feel like people expect you to constantly be on, and we just wanted to kind of take a step back and gain a little perspective about like what we were doing.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Well, of course they expect you're performing. You're supposed to be on. You know what I mean? And like
Sure.
that's more than the on stage time. That's the after the show, before the show. You know what I mean? Because like it's all kind of on, because you're meeting these people for the first time, and it's kind of you know what I mean? Like I I enjoy that bit of it, but like to put it in comparison, I guess like I find like if I talk to someone before the set, like I'm a pretty excited person. I'm enthusiastic about a lot of nonsense. So like I find I lose my voice via the show from being stoked about to talking to someone about Ninja Turtles or something before. You know what I mean? Like
Sure.
there's like or in this case Jimkata. Like what you know what I mean? Like there's a thing that wears you out, which is not that interacting and mingling and meeting people's performance, but you know there's aspects of that wear on you. So like I guess during that kind of before the kind of need to hit the brakes, did you guys have like kind of coasting methods you developed before, you know what I mean? Like not talking to people before the shows, or like some type of routine to make sure at least the performance was all there?
Honestly, one of the most frustrating things about it was like I think by the time that we hit the brakes, we had just started to figure out the 3-piece thing. And we had a great crew with us. Things were actually going pretty well. I think we just felt like we were kind of spinning our wheels, but I think there was also like, yeah, I don't know. In terms of the actual performance, Yeah, I mean, you do. I mean, for me, it definitely, singing every night, it seems like it only gets harder. I got to definitely be careful before show and after the show too, if you got several
Yeah.
gigs coming up. Cause it's tough. And then especially the way we started, when we started going on the road, like it would be like, show up, play the show, find a place to crash,
It's like 2 hours.
or just get in the van, go to the next place, and so there was a lot of just like socializing with people and just kind of getting, which actually, I mean, it really was great because I think we've made some connections and friends with different people that we wouldn't have made if we weren't just going out there and doing it. But it was a pretty, you had to be all in, there was you had to be just all in for the ride. And we were, and then I think by the time 2016, 17 came around, I think we were just kind of exhausted, felt like we were spinning our wheels a little bit and needed to take a step back, really. Yeah, I think in terms of the actual performances, though, I think it's only gotten better, and especially now, I think there's a level of like, I think dedication and professionalism that is there that just comes from like years of doing it and respecting it, like really wanting to put on a good show, really wanting to put on a good show, really wanted to just kill it, and I think we always had that, but I think there were times probably in like when you're in the middle of it between like, I don't know, 2013 to 16 or something, when we were just really, really on the road, where there probably was a little bit of just coasting here and there because you're just exhausted. But yeah, and time to step back and think about, things you could be doing better.
No, definitely. Like, it's like with any song, rest is like key. If there's no rest in music, the song just goes on forever, right? The note will always sustain until it stops, and then if there is no rest or pause in between what you're saying, you can't be heard. What you said can't be heard because it's a constant. Well, I was talking about this, and you never heard about this, and but you know what I mean. Like, if it's just constant go, there's no rest, and then there's no actual like payoff, or like there's no point being made because it's just go go go. So I think being able to say we need a break and taking that is such a big deal, and we live in a society, especially with like social media, where you constantly need to be putting out, and you see like a lot of bands and a lot of other creators putting out just kind of nonsense just because there's this urge for constant like content, as opposed to like kind of like sincere and like well crafted
Frustrating.
content. Yeah.
That type of thing was frustrating for us. I think there was an element of that at that time when we stopped. We had put out a lot of very sincere. We made what we thought were some great records that we were very proud of what we did. But I felt like things are shifting towards that way, and where like, I don't know, it paid off to be a little more gimmicky or something.
Yeah.
It was the age of going viral. Frustrating.
Yeah, and I think now, since coming back, we have focused a lot more on just, we realized like, oh, it is very important though to like have that presence. Like, what's the balance of, you're not just, shitting, but you're engaging your fan base, and keeping, I think we had to kind of take a hard look at ourselves and be like, how can we be more active and be more accessible?
But authentic,
authentic, and yeah.
Well, yeah.
I liken it to like if you were, if you paid to subscribe to a TV station and there's only something on it every 4 days, then people will lose interest. So like you gotta kind of, you gotta kind of keep people engaged who are already following you. And not to say that you have to just constantly be online, but like I think we realize like you got to give people a reason to pay attention to you.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with that, and I think if you're doing what you're doing and it's authentic to you guys, people pick up on that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like a lot of the viral, like, kind of mentality is like busking mentality in a way. You know what I mean? Like, if you're busking on the street, how you get someone's attention for a brief moment, And when you're only seeing like an aspect of that artist that's like, whoa, neat. You know what I mean? Like,
Right,
as
right.
opposed to really engage, which that's a skill in itself. And I'm not trying to bash that or diminish that, because like that's a huge deal. If you can busk and catch people's attention, like, or if you guys ever done the bar gigs, like where you're not just doing the band, you're doing like the acoustic act. Evan, I don't know if you've done gigs like that, but like
Totally. And I mean,
Right.
we've got friends. I mean, I have friends that like, I can honestly say that that's not something that I've ever particularly been good at online or in person.
yeah,
And I've got friends that are like just natural, like as performers, they're more of like that showman, like draw you in type. And like, it's awesome. And like, I think that's something in coming back with this. So like, I don't personally, like, I don't even really like to be on social media all that much. Like if I wasn't doing this, I probably wouldn't have to be. Like I wouldn't be doing it.
yeah,
But like I think there's like this sort of a self check-in of like, all right, well, what's ultimately important here? And what's ultimately important is that like we really believe in this music, and we've seen, at least for, you know, especially in the past few years and being away and coming back and playing shows, we've seen like what it's doing for people, and that there's this passion around our music. And I think the ultimate purpose is to spread that.
yeah.
So if I have to go, you know, take some selfies or something and throw them up, even though it doesn't seem at the moment like why that matters, if it's adding to the overall purpose, well, then I'm going to do it. You know,
Right.
It's
and
just kind of like,
every band will tell you that the landscape keeps changing as far as like what the algorithm will favor. So it's almost like, I think we've gotten better at almost making a joke out of like, hey, here's what people are going to actually see more of. So this is the post, and this is here's the message below it, you know?
Was it no? And like
you know, it's like, all right, fine.
I think what you're saying is super important. That is the bigger picture for the thing, but ultimately, it like most people with any creative endeavor, like you're influencing people to follow their own creative endeavor by showing that it can be done. You know, like even like the grander non like self serving purpose of any of this is that if you can follow your bliss and your belief and what you want to do, I can do that too. And look, it's working out for those guys, so I can do my thing. And like,
Sure.
you know what I mean? Like it's kind of what I'm hearing a little bit from being willing to do some of the nautical nonsense that needs to be done to float with, you know, to make the thing
Sure.
work. And like,
And I think there to you know, to continue on that, like I think there is some comfort in realizing that like a lot of this is just up to chance. A lot of it is just random.
Yeah.
A lot of like how people come across you is not in your control. So you might as well just like feel good about the stuff you put out and be consistent in how you do it.
right. No, I 100% agree with that. Like, there's no sense in being inauthentic to who you or you guys are as a group. Like,
Yeah.
because that's just
Well, yeah.
if anyone picks up if it's not that, people are just, oh, they're just trying to do this, you know. But like,
Totally. And like people see right through that. So like my personal strategy is always to like kind of like put that out as the elephant in the room. Like we all understand this is stupid, right? Okay, cool. Here are the show dates.
yeah. Oh no, I get. But like, there's a thing. Like if it's an authentic thing, even though if it's stupid, like our band, we just put out like we did these reels for a show. You know, these silly like you just talk to the thing. But instead of just talking to the thing, we reenacted our drummer sleeping through a gig, and we found that hilarious, and that went well. You know what I mean? Like, so it's just if it resonates with you, other people pick up on it, and I think that's the key to that kind of like nonsense, you know, or not nonsense, but that approach, that method, that way of reaching people.
Yeah, and it's different now too. Like, you know, to talk about like changing like themes. Like years ago, people might want your autograph. Now people want to see your house. People want to see like what people want to see what the inside of your car looks like as you like get on Instagram and talk to them. So it's like a weird, like, I don't know, it's a weird balance of like privacy versus like you being your authentic self and not necessarily putting on a show. Because I think the jig is up with people like renting a Ferrari and be like, yo, here's my new whip. Like that's like people see right through that. But like, I don't know, I think we have always taken a more humoristic approach on that, because it's like the music is serious, but we're all pretty goofy guys as people. So it's I mean, my approach is always just like the dumber it is, that tends to like you said, like it tends to do better. Like the dumber you can make advertisements.
Well, for sure, and I think like if you look at bands like the Foo Fighters, so they were pros at that. You know what I mean? All their
Yeah,
music videos were
yeah,
ridiculous, but
perfect example. That's the perfect example.
but the music's as honest as can be, and like I don't diving into because until like I wasn't familiar with your guys' music until like we picked up the show and I dove in to all the records and like the whole like you guys have a lot of that too, being named after this wild film and like the tunes you put out are so listening to other kind of bands that like your guys' name is around. I'm like, this is like some deep songwriting. Like this is cool, but it has like these like transitions that fit these other type of genres.
Totally. I'm glad you pick up on that because it's a balance of like, putting out like, music that hits on a deeper level for us, but also like with the overtone of like, but none of this matters, does it?
Yeah. But
And
yeah,
I think us embracing that side of it, though, the lyrical side and that deeper side has been important in the last like few years as well, because it was reflected back to us when we stopped, like through our fans.
Yeah.
We got a lot of messages and a lot of like in our final shows, a lot of heartfelt, communication and shared with us, and that was, I think, you kind of realize like, oh, I guess this really is hitting people.
yeah.
We mean
And
something to people.
yeah, and that was important. I think we definitely take that seriously, and like that's a part of every show now too. Not only are we kind of doing like, on a great show, there's also like people are like singing along, and you can kind of get a sense or feel like what it means to people now. And I think we have a lot of like respect for that.
Well, definitely, and like that's what I think makes you guys stand strong with a lot of these other bands that you're around. Like even what was the tune on the new record? Skinny Dippin'. I was like, wow, that was a really well written. Like that one had to be a song before the band, like because that was put together really well. Songs like structure wise, like the narrative of it.
Kicking around,
Yeah.
yeah, for a while.
And like, well,
Mm-hmm.
is that kind of the kind of jump back into that process a little bit? Like for when you're writing tunes, do you get like little song seeds that you like that kind of
Sure. A lot of bonfires was weird. It was different because it started out as like writing by myself without knowing how exactly would it be a Jimkata record, would it not? And then Packy and I were getting together and making beats and working on things, and we were thinking for a second like, oh, maybe we'll just do our own little project here. And because it truly kind of everything fell apart, so we just didn't know what the hell to do. So in a way, it was kind of cool because there was really in my mind, there was no attachment to like what the expectations for like a Jimkata sound is, or whatever. So it's kind of an experimental record for us. I think we're like, we touched a lot of different ground on that one. But that's because like I think I was just spending a lot of time by myself, like just chasing down ideas. And it'll start as a seed. Sometimes it's a fully fledged out song, and other times it's just like a seed. It's just a beat or a rhythm or but then at that time when I was writing them, I was just doing a lot of production into what I use, and but like I don't know if we're ever going to record this actually, so I better figure out how to make it sound good by myself first, I guess.
yeah.
And I'm sort of like I've become like that process, writing, being in the studio, it's like my favorite thing in the world. So it's like I just needed to create that for myself in a way. I would just sit at home for hours just doing that and be like, well, what can I do? I got to finish this song, because I just love that process of helping either helping someone else like finish a song or myself. I just love that creative really getting into it and figuring out like, what is this song? What needs to happen here? What's next? What about these lyrics? Should I change this? Should I do that? I don't know.
That's cool. It's definitely kind of a magic flow like spot, and once you get in the rhythm of like problem solving each thing, and then when it's done, you're like, oh, cool. You know what I mean? Like, but it's like it's a. So did you do you or was this kind of like when there was more pandemic time? Like, was there like just a regimented thing? Like, I'm gonna go work on this for this amount of hours every day, every other day, or would that be like when a song seed would plant itself or something would pop up?
I was doing, this was like probably in 2018, 17, 18 or something. Uh, Felt kind of just lost because the band wasn't playing.
Yeah.
We just didn't know what we were doing. And I think I was like unemployed and I just took like a month. And
Yeah, I
like,
remember.
I was just like broke. And I was just like, okay, I'm going to every day, 5 days a week work on music. And that's kind of where I think Bonfires came from in a way. Was I'd been reading this book called Big Magic. What is it? Elizabeth Gilbert. And she's a writer. She wrote that famous book, Eat, Pray, which
okay.
I haven't actually read that book, but she wrote a book on creativity called Big Magic. That was there's a lot of really cool insights in there, and one of them was she just was talking about her regimen. And one of the things she said that stuck with me was done is better than good.
Yep.
And I was like, whoa, like just the idea that no matter what, just go in and sit down and write every day or work on that thing you're doing every day and finish things.
Yeah.
That like kind of like get out of your own way. Good is, pretty self-critical. So I had like a million ideas from even getting out.
Yeah.
So, I've tried to take that approach a little more of like, at least just like finish things.
Yeah. And not judging yourself for what comes out.
Give them a chance. Yeah. Whether you use them or not, whether they make it to the public or not, whatever, but at least for yourself, try to finish it.
Gotcha. Done is better than good, right?
Yeah.
That's cool.
I think that's kind of become our mantra.
Well, that it's just kind of being in that state of create. It's like not often as musicians do you like practice creativity. You know what I mean? Like you practice kind of the technicalities that you need to do to put out the expression, right? You practice all the running the scales, running the mechanics of it, but not too often do you like have that time to practice playing with it and creating with it. And I think that's super important to do. I have a little regiment for myself that's not as like full song, but write a verse and chorus every other day. Just you have an hour, that's your limit. It comes out or it doesn't.
Anything. Anything. And like even for me right now, I'm busy with like all kinds of other stuff. But like even if I can just like, I don't know, sit down with my guitar with no agenda every day and kind of like noodle for a little bit.
Yeah.
And the other thing is like, not every song idea is I think the idea behind that book was like stop waiting for the big idea to come to you all at once. The lightning strike, it's gonna get, and then you're gonna finish the thing in one day, and that's the magic song. And it's like sometimes it might be that way, but a lot of times it's just taking one little idea and messing around with it for a few hours, and then either it turns into something or it doesn't. But at least you worked a little bit.
Definitely. To add to that, sometimes what I'll do if I'm feeling like stuck is I'll just put on like a random Spotify playlist and just like try to choose a genre that like I wouldn't even normally fall into, like the psychedelic cumbia or whatever, and just play along.
That's a cool playlist. Side note.
Yeah, I'll just play along to whatever, and like not knowing what's going to happen. And what that does is it basically like gets you a little more anticipatory on like how things happen as far as like structure.
Yeah. And
like not all music follows the same rules or the same formula. So it's a learning tool to just be like, why would they play it like that? Or like, oh, I see. So like this is going with my right hand the entire time, but then they just drop the kick and snare out. Oh, okay, that's an interesting device. And then like whether like I'm acknowledging it in the moment or not, it's locking away in my brain of like certain, the quote unquote correct way to do certain things.
I think constant. It's there's this. Are you guys hip to Mary Oliver? She's a poet.
I don't think so.
She wrote a book on how to. It was basically it's called the Poetry Handbook, and there's this quote, and I'm going to paraphrase it in a way that probably isn't 100% accurate, but it's like freedom of self-expression comes to those who are diligent, patient, and the other thing. But basically, like,
Diligent, patient, and the other thing.
and the other thing, perfect requote. Yeah, you can. But the idea of like the idea that you're dedicated. I remembered it. Diligent, patient, and dedicated. So like the idea that you come to this space every other day or every day or all the time, and you're reaching out for those things, even if it's mimicking what other people are doing or learning those forms, they eventually become your freedom of expression. And like that's such an important thing, and it's so hard to do and so hard to get in your head with like, oh, this is nothing, I'm wasting you know what I mean, like especially like Packy with your situation when you have like a lot of other stuff going on that needs your attention right now. So to keep that discipline is tight and tough. So, but
totally, and I'm working on how my new schedule is going to run in within those parameters.
What have you found it, or is it still developing?
Still developing. It's like I said, this is all very new. Like fatherhood's a very new thing for me right now, so I'm still kind of settling into how that looks.
Like it clearly shows with your guys' work that that's all there. One other thing I kind of wanted to ask about, kind of with this through line of like self-discipline and attention to the practice. When you do record, it's such a kind of like self-critical thing. You know what I mean? Like, and it's easy to kind of like doubt oneself of where it sounds, and it's easy for a lot of people who don't overcome that hump of like, oh, there's a thing here I like. Let me focus on that and build off that, you know? Like, there's a lot of people that hear their voice for the first time and they're like, oh my God, turn it off.
Oh, yeah.
What kind of, we'll use this to wrap it up because I really appreciate your guys' time. This has been a really fun, engaged conversation. And I guess we were talking about doing like authentic stuff to like that goes into the whole algorithm thing. For me, getting to pick people's brains like this and have like engaged conversations has been my way to handle that authentically. So I appreciate you guys for taking time and chatting with me today. And I'm looking forward to the show on the 4th at the Winchester.
Yeah.
But I guess my last question is like, did you guys find any like kind of like truths or ways to handle that kind of self-critical voice in your head when you're listening back, and the focus on the positive thing to move on to finish the track or better yourselves?
I think I keep in mind everybody's insecure. Just get over it.
Solid.
Yeah, I think it's tough. Sometimes that critic is right, but that inner critic, I mean, is right, but you have to do something about it. Like if you don't like the way your voice sounds, well, sometimes it might just be like, Jimi Hendrix didn't like the way his voice sounded, and his voice sounds awesome to me. So maybe there's that too of like, just get over it. But sometimes there's something like maybe go learn a little bit more about technique, singing technique, or if you don't like your guitar tone, well, then figure out a different amp to use, or research what your favorite guitar player uses, or I think there's value in actually embracing the self.
Yeah.
But then there's also a point where, and this is why it's been important, I think, for me to hear back from fans about songs or whatever, is there is a point where you have to step back and be like, it is what it is. A lot of people like it. And I maybe my or so much at this point. It'll be what it'll be. I've done my best here to express this idea, and now it's free. It can be out there, and the other people can decide.
Yeah. Sometimes too, I feel like it takes years for people to come around and be like, oh, I understand like what you guys are going for basically here.
Yeah, there's that definitely. Like how many like punk rock bands have been unburied from the record crate that are now like highly sought after. That's the underdog story that we're all hoping for. Sorry.
important to remember that art and music is subjective.
True.
So I think there's a lot of these days, especially, you know, when you scroll through Instagram or with like kind of like viral, like YouTube, Instagram, TikTok culture, like there's a emphasis on the best, like who's the best drummer, who's the best singer, best guitar player, who's doing the craziest riffs and runs. And there's a lot of that can make you feel intimidated, as if you need to be, it's sort of a sport music. And I think it's important to remember that, like, no matter what you're doing, nobody has your voice. Nobody has your hands. Nobody, you know, does things the way you do them. And that's, you know, you don't need to be like the best, absolute best, you know.
You don't got to be the best at what you do. You just got to be the best at being you.
Hey. And it's the to piggyback off the Hendrix quote, you know, it's like when he was on the Dick Cavett show, he's like, I'm the best guitar player in this seat right here tonight. Like when Dick Cavett brought, you know what I mean? Like, and there's something pure about that that's inspiring, that someone we perceive as the best thinks they can get better, you know? And I think that was really well said. Do you guys, I mean, you mentioned earlier that there's a lot kind of in the works. Is there another record you guys are working on?
We're just working on tracks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anything other than like the May 4th show that you guys want to plug?
Yeah. I mean, we're doing, what else are we doing? And that nearby, that same weekend, we're doing Buffalo Ironworks in Buffalo. We're doing the Thunderbird Music Hall in Pittsburgh 2 nights after that, May 6th. So, you know, to anybody listening, they can follow us on Instagram and find all the tour dates there.
It's a festival in Jamestown, New York, which is not too far from Ohio.
That's true.
Yeah, Whirlybird.
Whirlybird. Okay. All right. Well, guys, thank you so much for taking time and chatting with me today. I'm excited to meet you guys in at the Winchester on the 4th.
Yeah, same.
Cool. Awesome.
For great questions.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. It's been a
Good
great
conversation.
Talk.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. You guys made it really fun.
Yo, Spike Spiegel here. You just listened to Zig at the Gig podcast. Keep riding the bebop. See you, Space Cowboy. Bang.